Hello everyone, good morning. Welcome to the day 3, the last day of the 16th edition of NASCOM DSCI Annual Information Security Summit. I hope you all had a great experience and have got a lot of insight in the security domain during the last 2 days of the summit. We are starting the day with a masterclass by Cisco on a theme on integrated security platform. Once again, welcome to the workshop. Simplify your security with integration and automation. In the 2 hours of workshop, subject matter expertise from Cisco would be deliberating and providing insights on platform approach to security. So join your hands, please welcome with me the SMEs from Cisco, Mr. Vaishak Raman, Director, Cyber Security Business, Cisco System. Welcome, Vaishak.
Hey, thank you, Ishan. Just confirm if
Please,
you're able to hear me
yeah, I can
and
hear you, Vaishak.
and
Please
this
welcome
audio
Mr.
is clear.
Ashraf Ali, Leader, System
Please.
Engineering, Cyber Security, Cisco System. Welcome, Ashraf.
Thank you, Ishan. Happy to be here.
Now, please welcome Mr. Sandeep Yadav, Technical Solution Architect, Cyber Security, Cisco System. Welcome, Sandeep.
Thank you, Ishan. Good morning, everyone.
Now, please welcome Mr. Vinayak Godse, Senior Vice President, Data Security Council of India. And the overall workshop would be moderated by Mr. Vinayak. Welcome, Vinayak.
Thank you, Ishan, for introducing us, and I welcome all the participants here for yet another deep down discussion, dwelling into the lot of those nuances, basically where the security as architectural engineering is evolving. So today, what we'll be talking about is we had been to some sessions. We had talked about the platform-based approach to security and how entire security architecture now is looking for consolidation of the capabilities, but how it delivers value basically. How can you make sure that the although the management of security, the affairs of management of security become increasingly complex basically, and that complexity may leave a lot of those kind of blind spot, and it will be very difficult to sometimes get hold of those issues which could create larger ramification basically. So what we'll do in today's discussion is how do you simplify these complex affairs of security basically from the management perspective, because increasingly we are seeing that the expertise available in security, the kind of demand that we are seeing and expertise available in security, no matter how much we try, still there will be limitation in terms of how much skills that you create in cybersecurity space. So then another approach to address this problem is say, can you make the security simple so that the express requirement for the security get reduced, and probably people with not much of the complex understanding can able to handle their security, and that's where the security entire architectural evaluations are going basically. How that can happen at a ground level, what kind of engineering architectural evaluations which are failing and probably aiding this kind of a way of managing security is something that we'll be dwelling into today's interaction. I have with me Vaishak, Mohammed, and Sandeep, which will be taking us through. We will see the larger business understanding. We'll look at the tactical architectural ideas as well, and probably we'll also go and see how exactly it happens at a very practical demonstration way basically. So we'll able to see some of those use cases and how those use cases can be solved, and in a very practical demonstration as a part of this particular 2 hours interaction. So as this interaction is supposed to be going deep down technology, we would make it more engaging and more interactive basically. So please feel free to put your questions, observations, or comment here on a chat window. I will pick them up for the making discussion more engaging, interacting basically. We have some quiz also organized for you basically, so you can also participate in that basically. With this initial note, I welcome Vaishak for his initial context setting, and through with them then we'll have Mohammed and Sandeep taking us through entire discussion that we have planned for today's morning. Over to you, Vaishak.
Thank you, Vinayak. I hope I'm audible and is my slide deck clear and visible? to the
Yeah, yeah,
audience?
yeah.
Okay, great. And I think you touched upon very well in terms of the need to have a platform-based approach. And the reason is quite evident because the way the security complexity, as what Vinayak explained, is getting uh, bigger every day, right? So if you really look at it, how does a platform-based approach helps practitioners like you who are listening to reduce the time to detect and time to remediate your cyber threats? And we'll walk you through some live examples. And in fact, it'll be a deep dive technology session done by Ashraf and Sandeep, my colleagues, the cybersecurity experts out there. But I thought let me set the context towards what are we hearing from customers? What is the real challenge? What practitioners and the defenders are actually going through? So let me give you a context. If you look at it, the security industry has been there for last 2 decades or more even. If you look at it, the industry evolved over a period of time. Gone are the days people just looked at security is equal to a firewall or a UTM, right? And then came the era of antivirus. Then came the era of threats, where people looked at advanced persistent threats. And then came the era of integration. That's when the solutions like the SIM, the correlation engines, took a lot more popularity. But what we are moving towards the future is more of a time-based era. When I say it's a time-based era, where what matters in this complex security puzzle is these three parameters, which is your time to hack, which is completely external. And today, time to hack is actually decreasing in few minutes, depending upon the adversary who's there on the other side, right? But as practitioners and defenders, you have two important time elements with us to, actually defend these threats, which is time to detect, how quickly you can detect. And today, if I look at it, the industry average, as reported by Foneman or some of those research agencies, APJC average is roughly about 180 days to detect an attack. And whereas the time to remediate is depending upon the severity and the complexity of the attack surface, it can go to days, weeks, and even sometimes months. So we will take a little bit more time in understanding those two parameters, which is time to detect and time to remediate. And as practitioners, what are those uh, tools and leverage points and control points? What do you have at your disposal? So if you look at it, time to detect, the reason why time to detect is gaining a lot more importance is, let's say you find a zero-day vulnerability is found, right? How well a defender and a practitioner actually looks at saying, is this indicators of compromise present in my setup? And it takes into multiple stages, right? And the reason why it's gone into different stages is, if you look at it, a vulnerability is found, but the hacker actually kind of creates a payload, it creates a trigger to get into a compromised system, and then he moves laterally. So if you look at it, the time to detect is super critical to reduce those three critical parameters, which is reduce the dwell time of the hacker, right? The more he spends on your systems, the better the knowledge and the environmental awareness what he gains. So you got to crunch the attacker's dwell time. That's the first motion. Second, how do you reduce your lateral movement, right? Okay, if a machine A is compromised, how do you do your microsegmentation? How do you look at isolating that system in an automated way, right? And then you want to minimize the attack impact. When I say attack impact, it could be your data exfiltration, it could be your system downtime. So if you look at it, the classical NERC report, and then you really look at it, it is all boiling down to reducing the attacker dwells time, reducing the lateral movement, reducing the attack impact. Because the zero-day vulnerability does exist, right? So if you look at it, we got to spend a little bit more time in understanding how do you reduce the time to detect, so that an indicator of compromise is actually established. Now let's talk this through a real life example. And the real life example, now it's pretty much live on air for the last 1 week, is the Log4j. And I'm pretty sure most of my industry colleagues would have spoken about it, but we want to give you a practical insights to it, right? We all know Log4j is a library which is being extensively used on Java projects, and it has implications on your Apache struts. Apache Solar, and even around your Elastic. So there are three published vulnerabilities around Log4j. One is the CVE 44228, which actually explains your Java naming and directory interface. And you can actually exploit a website with this LDAP request, right? And the payload, what you want to actually execute. And for the first time, we've seen Kena, which is our risk scoring tool from Cisco. We found the highest score uh, in many years, right? So this vulnerability is real for true, and this is something which is actually happening today. And if you look at it, this vulnerability is also added with two more, which is the 45046, which has been identified in one of those Log4j versions, and even the 4104, which is very specific towards default configuration, right? So today we know there is a live vulnerability which is available on the 0-day part of it, but how do you prevent it? The first and foremost is to look at upgrading to the latest recent patch, which is Log4j 2.16.0, which is the most recent one, right? And which fixes the two of the vulnerabilities. And what are the best practices which is available as practitioners? And how do you know whether this vulnerability is actually exploited? And that's where the time to detect actually happens. Some of the best practices: look at investigating your internal and third-party usage of Log4j. It's just not about your own internal resource, but if you have any third party which is connecting to your setup, look for third-party usage of them as well, right? And disabling JNDNAI, which is a Java naming and directory interface, and limiting certain protocols in terms of access, and also completely removing the support for message lookups. And the good old practice of aggressive patching and conduct routine vulnerability scanning on this particular CVE will actually help you to reduce attack surface. So if you look at it from a time to detect point of view, how do you actually reduce this Log4j vulnerability availability in your specific setup? While there are some best practices, but let's take a step back and then understand what practitioners are saying about it. So the definitive, and this is a survey what Cisco did across 13 countries, across about 2,800 security practitioners, and it's very clearly evident that more than 80% of them have said, how do I look at multiple security vendor products and then get those orchestration, right? So it is important for practitioners to actually simplify your security assets per se in terms of visibility, right? More than 80% of them, 53 said somewhat challenging, and somewhat very challenging is what people have resonated. And if you look at it, automation has increased. So how do I automate my patching, right? How do I look at if a CVE is published? How do I ensure there is a tool which is enabled, which will make sure that it gives me visibility of those vulnerabilities, right? So automation is gaining a lot more importance than ever before, because 77% of your fellow practitioners have said that they're going to use automation to reduce the time to detect. And the alert fatigue, right? And what we have seen very clearly from the practitioners is the number of daily alerts is close to about 50,000 alerts. 70% of them have actually said about, yes, that's going to be a big alert fatigue for me. So in order to simplify your assets, it's important to have a vendor consolidation, and that's where a platform-based story actually appeals a lot more than this point product approach of I have a point problem, I bought a point product, and it has a point product console. How do I manage all of this? Do I need a manager of managers? How do I simplify my threat visibility and from a dashboarding point of view, right? So this is what customers are actually saying back to us. So if you look at it, if you want to really reduce your time to detect, first and foremost important pillar is gaining visibility, right? And second, do I get my threat intelligence, what's actually happening in the globe, fed into my system? And do I get the same level of analytics? For example, this Log4j, right? It's about patching that Log4j, system. But if I'm compromised, what are the callbacks which is actually happening back into my system? So how do I get quick visibility of what are the callbacks which is actually happening, who is dropping those command and control connections, which will actually pull the attacker for any different payload what they really want to plant, right? So if you really look at it, increasing visibility, getting a global threat intelligence, and looking at having an effective analytics, this is what customers are asking for. And how do you actually automate and orchestrate it on a single dashboard? Your assets could be wider, and you need to still gain the visibility of it. So in summary, time to detect is a quotient of these four important pillars, which is visibility, threat intelligence, analytics, and how do you automate and orchestrate all of these three pillars per se. Let's talk about time to remediate. If you look at it, any malware or a malicious span or a phishing or ransomware, these are the top threat vectors what we've seen during the pandemic as well, right? So this comes to the bigger question is, how do I'm going to patch it aggressively, right? How do I look at vulnerabilities emerging out of an unpatched system? And that's as high as about 46%, right? So if you look at it, if you are able to patch, let's take the example of Log4j. If you are able to patch those vulnerabilities and making sure that your systems are to the current 2.16.0, which is the version what they recommend, uh, your your actual vulnerability actually sort of gets minimized. So patching is an important, and your scanners, vulnerability scanners, do play an important role, right? And what is the severity of this breach, and how long the systems are going to be down? If you look at it, more than I would say 85% of people have said anywhere between 0 to 16 hours. That's the bulk. And if you look at it, more than 17 hours, that's an alarming one. So the time it takes for you to remediate is much higher. So while you do your aggressive Tuesday patching, it's equally critical to know how do you minimize your time to remediate. Now, how do you get back to the normalcy state, right? And there are again four pillars. When I say four pillars, because the assets are distributed across your hybrid cloud, and we've seen in the Log4j example as well, it's got even an elastic connector out there, right? So on, and you got to really aggressively look at what are your elastic searches, what you're doing in your setup. So hybrid cloud is an important part. Then your rest of your applications, and then your network, your endpoint and devices. So again, I'm trying to connect the dots of the Log4j, where you got to really look at your application vulnerability and also the vendors, the security vendors. Is there an inherent vulnerability which is available, which can be exploited by those attackers to plant a malware out there, right? So you got to look at it in two sets of your security products. What is there in your setup? Is it being updated against this vulnerability? And then your application vulnerability per se. So if you look at it, this is your time to remediate summary. And we at Cisco has always believed in a platform story. Although we did multiple acquisitions, we had assets on email security, cloud web security, identity service engine. What we did in the last 4 to 5 years is to actually embed that into a common framework, which is our actual platform story. And while Cisco went and did a lot of acquisition of these critical assets, we built a common framework in which all these products actually communicate, right? And thereby, any newer acquisition will actually get into this common platform. And the common platform, what we built is the actual Securex platform per se. And what it actually does is helps practitioners to investigate quickly. If you look at it, be it a Stealth Watch, be it a Cisco Umbrella, which is a DNS security, be it a Threat Grid, which is our sandboxing, or AM4 Endpoint, which is our XDR solution, or be it our next-gen firewall. So we built in a common framework wherein which all of these technologies communicate with on a pre-built API integration with one single dashboarding capability, and which is our Securex platform, which helps to give common threat framework. Because what you see as a threat on an email vector, how do you communicate that intelligence back to an endpoint? Or if what you see in your firewall, how do you see those threat metrics back into a common dashboard? So we did a huge amount of work in terms of simplifying these data assets, what we had in different parts of it. And we didn't stop from there, right? We also took the third party, and we made sure that all of these pre-built integrations are simplified through a common playbook, automation and orchestration capability. The log reporting is normalized, where the event correlation and the threat intelligence feeds back into the service report and the dashboarding part of it. So we've actually simplified all of those assets, what Cisco has built over many, many years, to a common threat framework, which is our Cisco threat response systems. And we didn't stop by just giving a platform-based approach, but we went ahead and then did third-party integration. And we looked at third-party integrations very seriously, because that's the world. Let's accept the world that it's going to be a heterogeneous system, right? And whereby Securex platform actually integrates with these third-party vendors out of the box as well, be it a ServiceNow, be it an IBM security from a QRadar or a Splunk, right? So this is the way we looked at an open architecture, which is cloud native, and this is scalable as we actually move on. So I would not take much of time from Ashraf and Sandeep to explain the security platform story. And if you got to really look at it, security is better when it is actually built in from the ground up, and just not bolted in from an add-on module point of view, right? So you got to have a platform-based approach to actually reduce your time to detect and time to remediate. With this, let me hand it over back to Ashraf and Sandeep, and we'll be available for any questions and interactions. Back to you, Ashraf.
Thank you, Vishak. Is my audio clear?
Yeah.
Thanks. Let me bring up my screen. All right. So Vishak talked about one aspect, right? There are two things, two takeaways from there I just want to resonate. Number one, time, right? For security, time is of essence. Right from the day we heard about the vulnerability log4j, everyone is running around and trying to fix things, fix the vulnerability, right? Because we know that there is an open vulnerability and exploit that is available to the bad actors. And there are many ways they can utilize that and take control of systems across the world for their, for their acts of threat attack or malware, whatever it can be. So time is very, very important when it comes to cybersecurity. Time to detect, time to remediate has become very important, and that kind of helps us to understand why we need to integrate things. Because in cybersecurity we have plethora of vendors, plethora of point products, too many consoles. We're already dealing with too much of data, too much of alert data, which we are not able to comprehend. When it comes to threat investigation, threat response. So this, for the next 90 minutes, we are going to focus on discussing this topic in depth. And the other thing I want to bring up from Vishak's point discussion is the quote, which said, security is better when it's built in, not bolted on, right? So if you, this can be taken in two ways. If you are looking at siloed products, unless there's an umbrella that allows you to connect between them and bring in context from all these siloed products to give you information that you're looking for, enrichments that you're looking for, when there is a threat, when there's a campaign that you're investigating. It takes away a lot of time to identify threats and remediate them. Now let's get started with this. We have polls, we have quiz during this session, so maybe we can start with one. We have a quiz that is a poll that is available on slido.com. Please, whether you have a mobile phone or a desktop computer, laptop, Please go to slido.com, join as a participant using the code that you're seeing on the screen. Put a short, and there's a passcode there. It's Cisco. And you can put a short nickname for you, and then join. There's a quiz that you will see there. Sorry, a poll that you will see there. Please take a minute to go through and put your answers to that poll if you can. We'll revisit this at a later time. So it's about, do you use automation for cybersecurity today? We're just trying to understand your perspective. In what form are you using? Are you planning to use, or are you using any tool when it comes to automation? Okay, so while you can do that and get back to this. When it comes to security, right? End of the day, whatever investment, whatever strategy the practitioners build, we are all for these five things, right? We want to identify threat, protect from known threats and vulnerabilities, detect impact because of exploits that will come from those threats and vulnerabilities, attacks that will come from these vulnerabilities, respond timely, either by containing the threat or responding by remediating them and recovering from them, right? So whether it is a tool, technology, process, people, investment, everything circles around these five aspects. And in the last decade, there is more focus on detect, respond, because we've come to a stage where 100% of the threats cannot be stopped, right? Because threats can survive in an environment for months and weeks and months, and we need to have tools that is giving us ability to detect them, whether it is in the initial recon phase or whether it is in the exploit phase, or even if it's persisting for a long time, we should be able to detect them, right? So we have come to a point of saying protection, firewall will do protection, antivirus will do protection, to even naming tools with detection and response, EDR, NDR. So we are talking about network detection response, endpoint detection and response. So uh, those are the tools that we are using today, and detection and response becomes very critical. And if I look at a strategy, every strategy will revolve, come down to this aspect. Observe threat telemetry, observe endpoint activity, network activity, correlate with threat intel. All this combined, we should be delivering the results of detecting threats. It could be insider threat, could be external threat, could be risks in the cloud, risks in the SaaS applications, risks in the industry environment, IoT environment, vulnerabilities there, critical data that we should not be sharing where it should be residing. So that's the outcome that we are expecting. And if I characterize this, it can be put into three buckets, right? First, expand and have visibility across. Ensure that you have all doors watched with enough monitoring systems. So when we say this from a cybersecurity standpoint, don't miss a threat vector. Uh, Email, endpoint, network, web, cloud, all visibility around all aspects of threat vectors is important. So cover your attack surface. To reduce massive data sets. With a lot of digitization today, we have more IP-enabled endpoints, more digital transactions that are happening if you take 5 years back, 10 years back. So when we put a lot of tools, there's a lot of data. I'm sure 9 out of 10 will in this call, in this session, will agree that there are too many alerts that I'm not able to handle. I have X tool, Y tool, A vendor, Y vendor. There's too many alerts. I'm going home, but I'm leaving a lot of alerts. I'm only picking what comes up on top. Or we're leaving that for forensic analysis, though it's a threat detected. Right? So I'm sure that is commonplace. And the third thing is accelerate. How do we accelerate with these two situations, evolving enterprise perimeters, proliferation of endpoints, more IP-enabled devices? more data coming from threat detection tools, the only way to accelerate the response capabilities is number one, when there is a lot of data, reduce that to critical alerts, what really matters, high fidelity alerts. Two, bring in automation that helps to reduce the workload on security professionals, security analysts. The analyst should be looking at things that really matters rather than all the noise that comes from the tools. So automation is key. And how do we go about doing that? There are, as I said, there are many drivers, right? There are too many tools, too many consoles. So I want to bring in context, have one interface that allows me to, hey, I want to investigate. I want to know, am I impacted by log4j vulnerability? If the vulnerability is available and it's patched, between the vulnerability disclosure and the patch, has there been any threat that impacted me? So there are a lot of research data that is available that tells me these are the indicators of compromise. How do I know? So these are things that you want to know. So automation helps here. But for automation, we can also use automation for many other aspects, like policy validation. So day-to-day IT ops, systems operations, network operations, security operations, day-to-day job, configuration changes that you want to do periodically. All those are required. Automation requires can be used in those aspects as well. Config change and things like that. But the key thing that we are going to focus on is threat investigation, threat response, threat hunting. Now, you might have heard about threat investigation, threat response, automation happening between two tools. Tool A calling tool B when there's a situation and doing remediation. What you're seeing in the screen is a firewall management console (FMC). It is monitoring all the internet-bound transaction to the servers, and it has found a server is downloading a malware. So the network malware detection tool found it. It may be doing it through malware protection capability on it. And we know that file is also getting pulled by end users. So you have the end user on the left. So you can now use these events, correlate who is the end user amongst 10,000 employees I have, what's the endpoint. Now you can use network access control solutions to quarantine that, right? So that's the example. So here we are talking about product talking to product. Could be two same vendors, different vendors. Similar, I mean, when products from the same vendor allows this to be done very easily, but we need things beyond this, right? And this is another example where the same thing happens in the data center, where the data center SDN fabric is invoked to isolate that infected app, because we have seen an infection happening there through the perimeter security device or through the server security device. So all these are possible. How are we doing this? We have the interface to these systems, right? All these are sensors, all these are eyes and ears, whether it's a firewall, antivirus system, anti-malware system, web security, email security, all these are eyes and ears. Whatever actions one can do on the console, enforce a policy, create a new policy, change a configuration, isolate a device, all these are done by what's called GUI, CLI, right? But we also have APIs. So that's going to help us to do command and control our own systems without having a person in between, right? It doesn't have to be the administrator always getting in there. We have APIs. So if we are building a program, the program can utilize APIs to take context, to ask for information, to send a command. All these are possible with APIs. What kind of APIs are we talking about? We have APIs for configuration, day-to-day IT operations management, routine configuration changes, change management. Okay, there is a change management module. ServiceNow says approved by level 1, level 2. Now, ServiceNow can execute a command to complete the change. We don't need a person, an engineer sitting maybe midnight, come at 12 o'clock. Maybe there is validation that's happening before that execution happens. So this is another way of automation, and you can use configuration APIs for that. There are data manipulation APIs where you can uh, get context. If I am a network firewall, I don't know about the user behind that malicious transaction. I will say that, okay, there was a IP address from the foreign destination talking to my web server. It is trying to exploit a vulnerability, right? I need more context on that IP address. Which country, which geo, what server? Is that server vulnerable? Is this exploit really valid? Those kind of things, context awareness. And if it is happening from an end user, who is the user? What is the endpoint? Which department? What kind of actions can I take with all this, right? That's where you use data manipulation and sharing, threat intel sharing. If I have a file hitting an email security solution, the email security solution is built for anti-spam, anti-phishing, those kind of aspects, right? File intel is not something the email security solution will have. It has to depend on malware analysis tool. So the incident, that event that happens on the email security can be now correlated with the file intel or global threat intel or analytics platforms to come to a conclusion on what is the file. Should I really allow that attachment to go through and things like that? And perform actions. Okay, so this is where the real action is, right? Okay, I have taken all the information from different sensors. Now I have a decision. What should I do? Quarantine, block, or simply open a ticket? Let the human interface, let the analyst administrator come down, take action because it's a sensitive environment. I don't want automated changes to happen. That's the possibility as well. Open a Teams room chat, let that be investigated further, or delete, move, add all the CRUD changes that API allows can be executed as well. Now, how
So,
can
Mohammed, can we just stay on this API part because it is also explaining the initial framework that you talk about, expand, reduce, and probably the term which has been used. So what these APIs have been trying to do is, first of all, it is trying to bring data for analysis and for on the data that you are bringing is to understand if something is going wrong basically. And on top of it, the second API set that you talked about is the enrichment that you are trying to bring to the table, right? So that is internal intelligence as well as external intelligence basically. And once you have that, then probably you make a sense, and then you probably send something to take action basically. And this action can be taken by various different kind of enforcers basically. It could be firewall, it could be anything else basically. So just to bring this understanding at a one page basically is to, one is get all possible data which can help you to understand that any small issue that could potentially be a problem. You know only if you have good intelligence, internal plus external intelligence available with you. That's the second set of API. And once you know that something is going wrong, then there you have API which will probably push the actions to the enforcing devices basically. Is this understanding right?
absolutely? So it's three steps: collect, correlate, take action. So
Yeah.
collect information which the analyst, if an analyst is put in front of the screen and if he has 10 tools, what would he
Yeah.
or she do? So that's where we are doing collection of data. What can I get from an email security system? Email box, message ID, the sender domain reputation, the history of the domain's, threat intel data. What can I get from an identity system? What can I get from a network security
Yeah.
system? So
Yeah.
collect, correlate. Correlation is where the brains of an analyst can be put to a program. When I say that, I'm talking about steps. It's like you are in a cockpit. There are some alarms that are buzzing in the plane, and the immediate next thing is the flight engineer has to take a manual, go to that page, execute 5 steps. So those 5 steps programmed, because you have all the information, now you program them in steps. And this may come down to a stage where you take action, and that's where the action of block,
And
allow,
this
quarantine.
this action of collaboration correlation is both internal and external data, right? So, for
Absolutely.
example, internal
Absolutely.
intelligence and as well as the threat intelligence which is coming externally.
Absolutely. Because if we are dealing with a threat for a particular industry or for a particular domain, uh, we cannot go past doing analysis without comparing global threat intel. Has
Yeah.
there been any similar transactions elsewhere in the globe, elsewhere in India, elsewhere in neighboring countries? So pick up those intel and correlate. If the same trace is seen in other bank, other public sector entity, you know that you're seeing a repeat offender. So no questions asked, right? You know there is a bad actor behind these observables. You have a quick decision based on that.
Yeah.
And to add, Vinayak, today's groups are organized. So if you really look at the groups which are actually launching this attack and offering cybercrime as a service, so their tools, their techniques, their procedures are very similar from a reputable point of view, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it's so important to mash up what is available in the global threat intelligence, see what is happening in your observables, and then take action. So, from a detection to remediation, what a platform can do is the scale at which it can deliver, right? And bring in that global threat intelligence back to you with an actionable intelligence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then this coordinated definition and recognition and correlation basically, and use that in a very coordinated, automated manner for the enforcement. Enforcement actions are very important because if you add human intervention here, then it will be the time to, as you stated, the time to detect and time to remediation basically. So this time is increasingly needs to be going down because attacker ecosystems is becoming very quick in that basically. So this would
Absolutely.
only happen if there is a system which is understanding and asking enforcers to take action, and enforcers here could be different solutions basically.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So that's where the context helps.
Yeah.
There could be three examples. Example one, I have a infection on an end user compute. So no questions asked. Go ahead and isolate that end user. The impact because of one person for the organization not being available on the network, not being able to use his business endpoint for a threat is very less as compared to a second scenario where I have this happening from a server, and if that server is in a production environment, I may have to maybe be cautious, open a ticket, maybe ask somebody to investigate
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I should
Yeah.
not, cut that wire which is actually carrying the business transactions. The third scenario could be it's happening from a server, but it's in a UAT or a test environment. No
Yeah.
questions asked. Go ahead and
Yeah.
so context helps.
Yeah.
Um, that's where you can take the right decisions.
Sure. Sure.
Okay, so so far it is very clear that automation is required because of to reduce the noise, to alert, to handle alert fatigue, to handle too many console hopping, and to investigate and remediate. So we can't have a level 3 resource. We also have skill shortage in this industry, right? Cybersecurity. So we can't have an analyst working round the clock, right? We may have analysts coming 12-hour shift or in the day, or we are outsourcing the analysis part to a third party, whereas the level 1, level 2 is operating 24/7. So it's all the more important to have automation in place. But can I build one? We've seen, I mean, it all looks like, you have the formula of building a car, you have a garage full of uh, accessories. Can you really do it? 99% of the situations, organizations don't have the skill set to do it, right? They always look for a platform that helps you to, that is open, interoperable, because as Vishak said, we cannot assume that we have an environment with one single vendor and one platform will address that. So it should be open, interoperable, it should integrate with multiple vendors as well. So if I compare that with tools that we heard in the market, it could be a SOAR, Security Orchestration, Automation and Response tool, or it could be an XDR. XDR is something that we have the analysts have started talking about in the last couple of years. And from this point onwards, we are going to look at what is an XDR and how Cisco is helping to address these challenges with its cloud native XDR platform. If I compare SOAR and XDR, so there are many commonalities. Of course, both are going to use API integration, right? The solution that we talked about. It helps us to do analytics because it gathers context from multiple sources, allows you to execute a playbook and respond efficiently, right? So you can, instead of allowing 10 consoles to be looked at by an analyst, you have one system which is going to pull information and bring in that data. One thing that is important is in both cases, you're talking about a massive data lake. A data lake is nothing but storage of unstructured data, which comes from different sources. So on a Cisco standpoint, the Securex, the XDR platform that we're going to look at nuts and bolts of from this point on is a cloud native solution. The advantage is it gives visibility of multiple metrics from multiple control points. When I say control points, email, web, endpoint, these are security control points. Gather metrics from all these and throw it on a single dashboard, a dashboard of dashboard. And also helps to improve investigation times because of the automation that goes behind it. And you don't need a huge data lake for doing this because it is not pulling data. It is only going to query and say, May 1st, do you have any transaction on May 1st on this particular observables? It is going to query that particular control points data store. So we don't have to build a data store, and all this is going to happen in runtime. So that's a bit of a different approach that Cisco has taken. The whole platform whole tool is available as a platform to all Cisco customers, complimentary. I'm again repeating, it's complimentary. So there's no cost attached to it. So long as they own a Cisco product, they can use it. There are 10,000 plus organizations using it. Even we've seen organizations who are Fortune 100 who have millions of dollars of budget to buy tools, who are the best of the tools in the industry. They are continuing to use Securex. So Securex is a form of an XDR. We heard about NDR, which does network detection response, endpoint detection and response. There are other solutions. So we can pull context from all this into Securex and give a view to analysts, IT operations team, NetOps team, SecOps team, anyone who is in the organization who needs to look at metrics, who has to. So there is an outcome for everyone in the IT organization or SecOps organization within a company. So if I look at how analysts are looking at XDR, right? If you look at Gartner, data from many proprietary security elements, that's exactly what we are doing. Or centralize and correlate. That's another point to underline. If you look at what ESG is saying, unifies control points, security telemetry, analytics, and operations into one enterprise system. That's again the definition very apt for what we are looking at with Securex. So from this point, I will hand it off to Sandeep. So we'll be in a conversation from this point onwards. I will take an audience shoes, a participant shoes. So I will question Sandeep on your behalf. So I'll be on your side. So whether over to you, Sandeep. We can start with the poll. Do you want to share the screen, Sandeep, from here? And you're
Yes,
on mute.
sure. Just a minute. Am I audible now?
Yeah, you are. So we can start with the poll. Please go back to your Slido screen. The participant code and the passcode is available on the screen. Passcode is Cisco. Participant the quiz code is 856490. There is a question. The poll question there, what is your perspective of XDR? Never heard it. Another tool in the market, a tool to unify control points from different security vendors, complementary tool to SOAR for SOC operations. So please key in your response there. In the meantime, Sandeep. Yeah.
Okay, so we're good to start.
Yeah. Your screen is visible.
Yep. So okay, so let's get starting. Whatever context was set so far, explaining the problem, the challenges, and how could we overcome this with integrated platform approach. So basically, Securex happens to be a cloud native platform with built-in platform experience. What you highlighted also, Ashraf. It is built within the product. So I'll take couple of minutes on the coming slides to actually show you how that experience matters and why or how we are seeing that it's a built-in platform experience, right? So on the left we have Cisco secure products, right from like Vishak called out. It's a well thought strategy that we have made all those acquisitions and brought in all those products into this platform, right from network, endpoint, cloud, or application protection. uh, we have also kept in mind the third party infrastructure, because nothing will ever be a single vendor product environment. So that's where we have third party products integrations brought in. These integrations are basically turnkey based integrations, which basically means you just need to key in the API keys or the secret to get going with the integrations with third party. And these third party integrations, as we'll see, will be from different aspects. You may want to do these third party product integration into Securex for multiple reasons. So we'll also try to take a look into that, right? So moving next, right, is Securex architecture in itself. So uh, as I mentioned, this is completely API driven and API built platform. Very first, we have made sure that everybody who logs into this by default gets MFA. So we have Securex single sign-on with Duo MFA enabled for Securex login, just to make sure that you do not just use username and password, but also use multi-factor authentication while you get it. Second thing we have brought in is dashboard. As Ashraf was mentioning, the dashboard will be one element of Securex as a platform, which gives you unified visibility of different KPIs that you may want to monitor as part of your NetOps team, or you may be part of SecOps or IT Ops team, right? So dashboard is what helps you unify that visibility for which you would typically hop to multiple point product consoles. Sorry. Over this, it's not about unifying the dashboard. Okay, there are some leaders who are interested in just knowing the KPIs. But however it comes to response, for especially for security analysts, for threat response, we are also unifying the visibility in terms of the events as well, right? Now, once you have the events unified into threat response from multiple products or multiple sources into one bucket, what you may also want to now do to go to take your investigations or research to the next level is orchestrate a lot of things. So typically whatever you may be doing day to day, you can orchestrate that. The orchestration, we'll talk about this in more detail. And tasks which you repeat every day, you can customize them as part of orchestration. To continue the experience, the built-in experience, what we have is a ribbon. And ribbon in itself is actually an API, right? And we use API in the backend uh, for Ribbon framework to talk to a lot of components so that you do not have to leave this XDR console. And now, because you have that repository and you have orchestration's workflow, they can work hand in hand. There could be any event in the threat response or unified visibility bucket, which could literally be the triggering point. Maybe any event of critical severity, that could be the one. Maybe there is an email that is received to a monitored mailbox, which could become a starting point, or this could be manually triggered by a security analyst. So anything could be a triggering point, which basically triggers the bottom box, which is for orchestration, and that can take care of your orchestration of the workflow. And finally, basis of the end result can trigger a response as well, right? So uh, when we talk about threat response itself, this could come from different contexts. The context could be local. You can talk to third party products or Cisco products for intelligence and for response also. For example, you may want to, as part of the workflow at the end, you may want to block an IP, right? Or you may want to tune a particular signature, or you may want to add a particular domain or a URL to the blacklist or a hash to the blacklist and so on, right? So those could trigger the response on the right side with Cisco security products as part of response actions. On left, we can literally try to do the same thing because this is API driven and open API. That's what it is built on. You can use third party products also. For third party products, talking to third party products, it's relay modules on the left. We can literally do the same thing. You can ask for context from third party products. You can ask for intelligence about an IP, email address, domain, URL, and so on from third party products. And you can also respond to them in terms of blocking an IP, URL, hash values, and so on, right? So
So,
those will
so
help you trigger the actions.
So this
Yes.
is interesting. You showed us dashboards. There is a threat response module, and there is an orchestration module. So orchestration module is where we push the playbooks, right? Dashboard is more like
Yep.
a screen that I can put on a SOC, big screen, and or give it to IT ops, net ops metrics that they should be looking at. How many emails got quarantined? How many files got quarantined? How many computers got quarantined? How many DNS queries got blocked? Things like that. So that's the metrics part, right? Now, when it comes to third party, what we are seeing is on the right hand side, there's a ribbon framework, and the ribbon framework, I know from my experience, I could say that it's like a taskbar on Windows, right? When I open
Hmm.
multiple apps in Windows, the taskbar stays, and I can always go back to the taskbar, use an application from there. I have shortcuts and all that. So I think Ribbon is like that, right? So we have a taskbar equivalent on top of all the products, which carries context from different tools. Um, what can I do with third party? This is all on the Cisco side. When it comes to third party, we have context, intelligence, response, action. Can you give an example of what all can I do with third party?
Okay. With third party. So let me just bring up my console here. Right. So let's take the home view of Securex in itself, right? So let me just jump to the dashboard first. So, uh, on the dashboard, basically on the left will give you visibility into the apps, what you have already enabled, right? And what Cisco integrations you could do. However, here you will see what other third party integration that you can bring in. Okay, so
So apps are
this
nothing but apps to connect with third parties.
third party, yeah, right. And we have already bucketed it, so enabled will already tell you that what third party app is already integrated in your current environment, right? So let me minimize that. Now the center frame is basically giving you the view where these are customizable dashboards as you were calling out, right? So these are completely based on different KPI someone wants to monitor. Someone is more interested towards events based on MITRE attack frameworks from coming from different products. So he can use that, right? Or if someone is more interested towards just looking at the allows and blocks being done, he can. So you can completely customize these dashboards for the kind of information you really want to monitor, right? And go back in the
So
time
we're looking
frame.
at metrics from multiple products here, right? How many products
Yeah,
are these?
multiple. So here I have got from email. I have. I think I literally have from five different products, from web, from umbrella, from cloud analytics, NDR, and then from email
Yeah. So things that I normally observe from five different
consoles.
consoles, I'm seeing it from one console here.
Yeah,
And metrics that matters, right? Okay.
right.
And
You can
what you're showing on the top, there's NetOps, SecOps. So these are dashboards for different roles. Is
different
that
roles
right?
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So if I'm a NetOps team, my care aboards are where is the traffic? I mean, which firewall is actually bleeding with CPUs, traffic, high traffic, high number of connections.
Yeah.
Whereas in SecOps, I don't bother about that. I'm worried about threats. I'm worried about events. So
Correct.
accordingly, I can have these dashboards customized. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And all of
Yeah.
these
So
are clickable.
and then these are clickable, but they are certainly bringing that context to the central
One.
processing that you are doing, and also bringing that intelligence. But I had to send some actions there, right? So you also talked about you can trigger some actions basically, and respective third party solutions can take those actions as well. So how that happens basically?
Yeah. So that happens via integration modules,
Hmm.
right? So integration modules will basically give you these capabilities. I think we will have a couple of slides
If we if we are
on
covering that during the presentation,
yes.
let's then
We
park it
yeah.
here. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I made a note
Yeah.
of it. Next section, yeah, will actually be covering this as well. So,
So
but I'll
basically,
at
there
least.
are three modules.
Hmm,
We are right now looking at the dashboard module. There is and ribbon module. We'll go
Yeah.
into threat response and
Yeah. Yeah.
orchestration, where the response actions can be shown. Actions can be shown there.
yeah. Right. So, so just bringing everyone back to this, right? So we looked at this, right? So you had numerous console. You can go to multiple each of them. And after moving to the XDR, how we can instantly see what matters to us in one single view, and you can have your own dashboard basis of your own requirements. You be part of NetOps, SecOps, SOC, and so on, right? So right. So let's go to next. I think I covered this. Your left panel will give you the app view. Middle panel will is space will give you the metrics. That's basically is where you will be able to add the widgets. And the right panel, what I was showing you, will give you product updates, news, and blogs updates feeding in over there. Right. Uh, the dashboard
I just
or
want to
yes,
I just
please.
want to emphasize on one point in the earlier slide. The right side of news, blogs, you can have RSS feeds coming from SANS, Storm Center, any of the threat research organizations, CERT in
Yeah.
those feeds are available for visual in this screen, but the same feeds can trigger a threat response, threat hunting action as well. We look
Yes.
at that in the second module. So in this case, we are looking at it in a visual format, but let's say at 3 a.m. in the morning, there's a feed that comes about log4j related threat campaigns. You can use that feed to trigger actions. we'll look at that when we go into threat response and orchestration module.
Yep. Thank you for calling that out. Yep. So uh, a all these widgets, I'll not spend much time, but these are customizable. As we discussed, you can have your own metrics set over there. I would like to bring attention to this particular piece because this plays a real role in terms of consistent experience or built-in experience for the platform in itself. Don't worry on the name. We have named it Ribbon. However, what it, like Ashraf said, think of it as a taskbar, right? And no matter what window you hop on, this is gonna stay with you. The ribbon will basically carry the data around some sub apps within this, which are these, right? Which is casebook. So a casebook will be applicable to an analyst for gathering observables or IOAs or IOCs. Right, you can maintain a casebook with all details related to an ongoing investigation that you are doing, and you can also bring share it with your other colleagues or other analysts, or you can bring them into that ongoing investigation. That is one. Second element here will be incident manager. Now this will be a list of security incidents. These incidents could be coming from different products, like for example, you have an IPS, and IPS had a low severity event, but it was of higher impact because even that low severity was directly related to an operating system or a application that you're running in your environment. So it's a high impact intrusion event which has led to escalating it as an incident in the incident manager. You can pick that up, right? So these can be coming from different sources as part of incident, and incident manager will allow you to basically use that incident handling workflow where you can assign a particular incident to someone. He can work on it. He can open up a further ticket on it, investigate, close it, and triage it, and so on. And finally comes Orbital Advanced Search, which is actually based on OS query, and this allows you to do analysis and proactive threat hunting using pre-built queries. And these pre-built queries are built around MITRE attacks, tactics, and techniques. So you can use those to do a live hunting or threat hunting and incident response in your environment. Right. So let's take a look at the ribbon in itself. Right. So if you see at the bottom, this appears to be is the ribbon appears to be like a taskbar, and when you go to the base or the parent menu, this is where it gives you casebook. So this is basically the casebook what I was referring to. So like for example, log4shell, we have been maintaining a casebook, and you can have all the details related to this in here, right? So for example, I have this casebook, and I have uploaded the blogs or the details what I've been following from where I've been gathering all these observables for my working. Right, I can go ahead and link this to an incident, create a new incident, or search for an existing incident that is already there. Where do you get this incident? It's here. So incidents is basically what gives you uh, different incidents which you can use. I think it's broken for me now. And you can leverage, and let me just refresh. You can you can call in a particular incident if needed into a particular casebook as well, right? So that's where it allows you to integrate or stitch together an incident with a particular casebooks, right? So when we go to the casebook, this is where it gives you option to link a particular incident that could have been coming from some different source, right? So this is basically a casebook that you can use to collaborate and work with other colleagues or other analysts, right? So that's casebook. I showed you incident as well, and besides this, what you can also do is you can run Orbital. So Orbital basically happens to be for OS queries. This will basically allow you to run the queries right from this particular panel. So let's try to come in here and take a look at Orbital, right? So this will allow you to get the endpoints. You can add random endpoints here, and then it will allow you to take a look at the catalog of different queries over here, right? So if you go in a full-blown console, you will see that these pre-canned queries, which are a result of Talos, right? These are also in form of MITRE attack techniques and techniques. So you can use those to actually run or execute any of your query, and these queries will typically be the live queries, right? So for example, let's try to like login logouts, and you can just click on live queries here, and that should
Mhm.
basically do instant queries to the machines and bring back the results to you, right? So you do not have to leave the console as far as if you want to do investigation or proactive threat hunting, right?
So can you
So
show? Okay, we are on Securex. Can you show console cross launch and ribbon on a different console
Mhm.
as well?
but yeah, all right. So all our applications will be up here. So what you can literally do is you can cross launch using single. So this is where the initial part comes into picture of using single sign-ons or of uh, the consoles, right? So you can do a cross launch right from here, and that should take you to respective consoles. This is also applicable to the dashboard. What I was showing, the KPIs, whatever you were monitoring, were uh, also had a cross launch option, so you could have literally clicked there also and got into any of the respective products wherever whatever you wanted to basically see or dig down or double click for more information, right? So this takes me to Orbital. I'm not logging in. That's basically a single sign on, right? And if you now notice, this ribbon is consistent with me, right? It's the ribbon is here. I went to another console, the ribbon is still here. So whatever I'm doing, irrespective of if even if I move to another console, the ribbon doesn't leave me. That remains with me, right?
Yeah.
So
So there are three things I wanted to highlight from what Sandeep demonstrated. Number one, um, when it comes to SecOps, it's about collaboration, right? We will have one analyst picking up an incident for investigation,
Yeah.
and you will have others collaborating. They may be running in shifts. So the casebook incident manager kind of helps us to record the work that this analyst is doing, so when the next person comes, he has the trail of information, the snapshot of what was done for him to continue to run that investigation from there. And all the information that is required for the investigation is available. Two, we are carrying this information between products, whether it is anti-malware or DNS security, network security, whichever console you go, the ribbon is at the bottom. So it carries the data, whether it's a casebook or incident, you can refer right from there. Just bringing up that ribbon framework at the bottom. And the third thing is the live queries. The live queries are important for threat hunting and threat response. I have 10,000 endpoints in my organization, and I want to know endpoints with vulnerability X, because there is a threat campaign out there which is related to that vulnerability X. You can go to that query console, run a query. In within minutes, you'll see all the information about that endpoints which are only vulnerable to that particular vulnerability. This is one example. I can, if you are familiar with MITRE attack framework, there are different techniques and tactics MITRE has documented that cybersecurity threat actors are following, and they follow many groups and they document them. It's vendor agnostic, so we can apply those techniques and say, okay, if I'm hunting for a particular technique in my organization, I want to know which are the targets which are exhibiting those, have the traces of those techniques. Again, we are using an open framework. all we are highlighting here is the ability to query 10,000 endpoints from one console without having to go to whether it's registry key settings, whether it is processes that are running, everything can be queried from that. So these are key things for any investigation: collaboration, ability to carry data between consoles, and the ability to investigate live wherever the endpoint is, even if they are working from home. The endpoint will be subject to queries because we are talking about a cloud native system. The endpoint has this console has access to the endpoints for all these queries because SecOps has to have control for them to do investigation and remediation. Back to you, Sandeep.
Thank you. So, right. So this is what we looked at, right? So I'll just spend again a couple of seconds on this. So this allows you to not to lose the context. You can go from console to console, and your context is still maintained. You can search, you can query endpoints, you can find observables. We'll take more look at this one, especially in the threat response capability coming up next. How can you find observables outside of Cisco products? So I think we tried looking only at Cisco products so far, right? So coming up next is we have a poll.
Yeah, can you move to that slide?
Just right. So again, if someone has joined a little late, this is the third poll, and you should have this on your screen now.
Yeah, please go to slido.com, join as a participant with this code and this passcode. Put in a short name, your name, nickname, whatever you like, and you'll see the poll. Poll question is: how do you find the dashboard of metrics from multiple control points? We want your opinion on how you see it. Whatever may be the opinion, not useful at all, somewhat useful, very much helpful, whatever you feel like, you can give in your response there. Okay, back to you. So I think we looked at these things so far, right? Integrations, ribbon, sign-on, single sign-on into the platform, cross-launch between products, dashboard of dashboards. Right now, we'll move on to the next module, which is threat response.
Yeah.
This is a core capability of the platform, something that helps investigate a threat campaign. Even today, if you go to a Log4j advisory, there are two things to the advisory. One is, what is the vulnerability about? How to fix it? What versions fix it? What kind of remediation actions that you can take if you are in 214, 215, 216 disables it. All that information is about vulnerability. But there's another side to it. The bad actors have already taken notice of this, and they have started creating pre-ransomware activity. They've started creating exploit codes. They've started even using email as a vector to identify infected hosts and launch an attack. So that's the second side of it. Now, an organization's patch management, somebody who's responsible for vulnerability and patch management, they'll have to focus on the first part. What is my vulnerable system? How to fix it? Whereas the SecOps team has another challenge, because we are talking about a weakness which is out in the wild. Many systems have not been patched, so the entire threat actor ecosystem has started, started innovating on how to use this and attack different organizations. So there are information that is coming out from that particular research articles, blogs, advisories that says, okay, these are the ways in which the threat actors have started, attacking pre-ransomware activity, precursors to malware activities. So that those kind of articles will have what's called indicators of compromise. Indicators of compromise are nothing but observables that are involved in a campaign. An observable could be IP address, email address, domain name, URL, file hash. What kind of payloads are they pushing? The fingerprint of the files, SHA values of those. So those are the indicators of compromise. This module will focus on how we can quickly use those indicators and identify, hey, there is log4j, yes, patch management is happening, but there's also attacks that will come up because of these exploits available. Am I impacted by it? Is there any trace of this particular IOC in my environment? So that's what you're seeing on the screen. If you don't have an XDR like tool, all you have to do is pick up those IOCs, get into product dashboard 1, product dashboard 2. Okay, if it's domain, let me get into DNS logs. If it is URLs, let me get into proxy logs. If it is IP address, let me search all my NBAT tools, firewall logs. So that's time consuming, right? What threat response allows you, because of all the integrations that we have, it will do the job for you. It will pick up these IOCs and hunt and search all these control points, whether there is a trace of it. If there is a trace of it, which endpoint is involved? If it's email, which email box is involved in the transaction? If it is a server-based transaction, what server? So that's what you're seeing on the right-hand side. Sandeep will
And
take.
Ashraf, if there are multiple application probably using this component which could potentially be impacted by this vulnerability, it will help you identify those applications as well, right?
Absolutely, yes. So when we integrate with a vulnerability management system, for example, we talked about the EDR's ability to run a query on every target endpoint. So we can even use this to verify a particular vulnerability if it is present in my footprint of servers, my footprint of virtual machines or endpoint computers. So there are two types of vulnerabilities. Again, when it comes to vulnerabilities, there's OS kernel-based vulnerabilities. There is application libraries, like where you need tools like RASP,
Yeah,
which tells us, okay, these are the libraries in my application which are vulnerable. Log4j is that kind of a vulnerability. So if I bring
yeah,
in
and
context from a RASP tool, I will definitely
yeah,
know
yeah,
what's my footprint
yeah,
that is vulnerable to this. And IOC is
yeah,
correlated to that, confirms that I'm looking at IOCs for log4j related ransomware and malware attacks. And I
yeah.
know the target that they are after is also vulnerable. So it's 100%. So even if it's a production server, you should go hit the block button.
Yeah. So means anything to do with like RASP or any application security governance program, if that get integrated, probably then it will help you to cover those element where exactly it will be impacting basically. So
Yes,
this,
yeah,
yeah,
that's precisely why Cisco made the
yeah,
platform open, so that
yeah,
capabilities that Cisco products don't have has to be
yeah,
brought in as well. So
yeah,
the RESTful API integration framework that we have allows us to
yeah.
integrate with any tool as long as it follows a RESTful API
Yeah,
framework.
yeah, and it's not only the existing tool in the future. Some small part of a small issue or use case of application, any other area, any new startup may come up with its own solution. If it is using RESTful API, you would be able to integrate with it, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah,
And we also made it into in two ways. One, Cisco is also working with third party,
yeah,
their engineering teams, and
yeah,
building adapters, building relay modules, so that we can get the outcomes of Securex from those third party modules. So here there is an engineering to engineering collaboration. So when Sandeep showed applications of third party, those were done by collaborating with those engineering teams. At the same time, we have a generic module. The generic module allows anyone any new company that will come up tomorrow, anyone can create that module by using the right parameters. Again, all you need is the JSON that is related to that particular adapter. Build that JSON that gives you the response, starting from token authentication all the way to the response and all that interaction that you need to have. Then you're on. So tools that is available in the list, click to onboard. Tools that are not available in the list, use generic module and integrate. Even if something comes up in the future, as long as it's RESTful, it
Yeah,
can be integrated.
yeah.
Back to you, Sandeep.
Yep. Sure.
Please go
Thank you.
ahead.
So, but like you rightly said, going to each product, spending your time on picking up different observables from different point products, and then going back to owners of these different point products to actually remediate that. Okay, make sure that the URL is given to the proxy team so they can block it. IP addresses are given to the WAF or the firewall team so they can be blocked and so on. What we are trying to do here with threat response, which happens to be one of the module of uh, of Securex, right? So let's try to first take a look at this, where and what this is. So we have threat response as also as a module in the application list. So you can click and cross launch threat response. Now, what does threat response do? Threat response basically allows you to investigate the observables. Now, what can you search? You can literally search what Ashraf was trying to call out. IP address, domain, file, hash value, URL, IMEI number, certificate serial number, certificate name, right? Any of the observables is what you can dump in here, right? So that's one thing. Now, once you put the observables in here, it goes back to the first module what we went through, which was about Cisco and third-party modules, right? So those modules now start bringing up the value. The more modules you have integrated, the more context and intelligence you will have, and the more confident you will be to actually take the decision whether you want to act on it or whether it's only good to know information and so on. So let's let's get back to the slide, right? So after bringing in that entire context, right, which could be from email platform, from firewall endpoint and so on, you first of all get everything in one single view, and we give you a relationship graph. Okay, we do not try to gather all the data and then show you it in form of log. First of all, it comes in form of something called as the relationship graph, and also comes with information over and above what you have asked for. Why? Because you have the modules integrated, and we can literally query these modules and ask for the necessary information. Once you have that visualize thread or visualize relationship graph of the IOC or the observable and your environment, this is the time where you can actually take remediation actions, and these remediation or response actions can also be from the same window, right? So let's try to go back to our threat response console, and let's say, for example, let's try to use something from here. So let's look at this particular one. Okay, so this is on Cisco blog. However, one of the thing, if you noticed, ribbon is missing now. Okay, we do not really have the ribbon available. So let's let me just take this on this window. So what we do, we have this blog over here, and until now, whatever console I was going, I had this ribbon, and ribbon was really helping me in terms of searching the observables. But I have left Cisco product. Does this really work with non-Cisco product also? Yes, absolutely. So that's where that ribbon becomes a plugin module in the browser itself, right? Which is right here on the top. This is where it shows up. And as far as, right, so as far as configuring this is considered, this is really easy. you just need to put in API. So this is what I was telling you as far as integrations are considered. These are made really easy, and all you need is API keys, right? So you just have to go grab the API key from the tool here. Just generate a new API key, right? That's gonna give you a secret and the key. Just put in and you will have the plugin ready. Now, what does this do? It literally takes me outside of Cisco product, first of all. And now this could be any third party page. So this is the page, and you may not want to go through entire thing. However, you may want to know about IOCs and other things from this page. You can use the plugin, right? So the plugin has got a scrapper. So let me try to do it here. So this is a good page with good detail on this particular attack, right? But I do not have time to go through this. My intent at this point from threat response is three things. One, can I do the detection piece first, right? So I just go ahead and run this observable icon over here, which is for searching the observable, and I run this on this page. So in less than 15-20 seconds, you see it has already scrapped 43 plus observable from this entire page, right? And not just that, in those 10 to 15 seconds, right? It has also gone ahead and queried the modules, right? So it has not just given me the information of 43 observable, it's also telling me that two of them are clean, 24 of them are malicious, one of them is suspicious, and 16 are unknown, right? Now, so first of all, this becomes primary information source that I have detection capabilities available or not, right? So everything with the skull icon is malicious, and if we see this, we'll be able to block it. One. Two, okay, I know we have detections. Uh, I would now want to know, is any asset or anyone in my environment has shown sign of any of these observables? Has anyone communicated or tried communicating with any of these which are bad? And that's where you go to step number two, which is investigation. So what we can do is we can say select all and we say, okay, investigate. And now this brings you to the threat response page back, right? This is where we are now going to query all these modules. We are going to query all the observables, 43 of them. We will query them against all the modules to find out, is there anything bad, right? Is there any log with the firewall? So we'll query firewall also, we'll query proxy also, and every product to know if anyone has seen anything related to these values in here. And if that's the case, you come out with an important information related to targets. And if you have any target, which means you have signs of compromise in your environment, right? That basically will lead to response action. So detect, investigate. We are right now what we are doing is investigate. And if you have any target showing up here on the left top, that's where you go to the third step, which is remediate or response,
So
right?
that's good. So
Any
initially you showed a observable window where you can paste information on observables. And with the plugin on Chrome browser, it's a plugin for Chrome browser, right? So any security
This one
tool
is for
can
Chrome.
be, yeah. So any security tool can be loaded as long as the web-based access. Could be Splunk, could be Fortinet, could be Pen. So you can have a page, from that page scrape observables and then investigate in an XDR like Securex. That's very cool, right? And this could also be a Sandstorm Center page, or it could also be a blog page from any of the threat research organizations. As long as we see observables, we don't have to go through the observables in the page, go to individual products. With this integration, XDR is doing all the job of scraping the observables and then investigating in my integrated portfolio of products using my platform.
Yep, that's right. That's right. So on This one, right? You see 43 or 43 are enriched. You used 5 different modules. It's all in place and zero target. So this is okay. What this could look like, what does this look like in case of if there were you were looking at something and there was something in your environment? This is how it would look like, right? So
Yeah.
doesn't matter you investigate one or you investigate 10, 20, 50, 100, 1000, 2000. What matters is there something in your environment, and that's what it is. So I'm trying to look at one IP which to me I found from somewhere else was suspicious, and I'm trying to look and build the investigation around that. And I have, if you see, I've only asked about 10, 20, 20, 142 in this case. However, because multiple products are integrated and I could literally query them, what I have received is more than what I could see in terms of SIEM logs or a point product log, right? I have information right from so this is what I had queried, the one with the lens, and everything associated with this is what I have received extra. Why? Because every module had some information to share with me, right? So that's where it draws out the different threat context, and this is where the signatures comes in. So even for log for shell vulnerabilities, we have snot IDs there. So if there are any signs of compromise, yes, this is how it would look like for you. If there are any signs, any signatures fired or triggered related to log for shell vulnerability being exploited in your environment, you will see the signatures ID like this, and you will see the details of the targets against whom that vulnerability was attempted for exploit,
So
like
there
this.
are 9 targets. So
Yeah,
9 machines in my company is somewhere related to this threat campaign.
yeah.
And I'm looking at an observable, and that observable is also related to a domain or could be related to a
IP
website.
URL.
And when I query a proxy, the proxy says, "Hey, somebody has reached that website," right? But you're actually querying for an IP, but the IP is related to a website, and that website is related to another target. So even indirect targets are also being identified in this investigation.
Yeah, right.
Now, what can I do to take action on these 9 from this console?
So for actions, you can actually take manual, right? Manual actions. So your manual actions could be, okay, I know this is one of the target, right, already here. So if you already have EDR, you can go ahead and run isolation for this particular EDR. Uh, the important piece here is you do not have to leave the XDR console. So I can probably say start isolation, right? For for the files, I do not see any bad files here. However, let's just for the sake of showing that you can execute the actions, you can add, had this been a bad file, you can add it here. You can do a file, you can look for a file trajectory, you can do a file fetch, right? Maybe you want to further investigate that file, or maybe you want a copy of that file to analyze in the sandbox. You can fetch the file. You, if you have URL, you can submit a particular domain or a URL for further analysis in the sandbox, right from your side, right? So let me just show that action as well. So basically, whatever actions you configure as part of different products will offer you different action that you can execute. You can bring those in here, and you can apply those actions right from here without leaving the particular window,
Yeah.
right? So I can probably say submit this for analysis, right? So that can go for
So then
analysis.
the actions could be number one, it could be atomic. When you say
Yeah,
atomic,
yeah,
just one feature of one product. Um,
exactly.
for firewall, block an IP. For an endpoint, isolate an endpoint. for an identity system, disable that particular user. So these are atomic
Atomic.
actions. Two, the actions can also be a chain of events, right? Take
Yep.
these 5, 10 steps from this point onwards. So in that situation is where we will use workflows, right?
Yes.
The orchestration workflows.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. You're right.
So there are a couple of questions here, Rakesh and Mohammed. I think we can take them. So one is observable is the word that you have been using.
Hmm.
So the question is the what is that? Is it a part of the IOC or you observable is means you are probably looking at possible attack or indicators of attack basically.
Okay, so there's a difference between IOC and an observable.
Yeah,
Observable could be any parameter, any IP, domain, email address,
yeah, yeah,
file hash, any of them could be an observable.
yeah,
Whereas an observable related to a campaign is an
yeah,
IOC.
yeah, yeah,
There are many file hashes. File hashes are associated with Log4j precursor ransomwares are few. It is there coming from different threat research blogs.
yeah,
So when we investigate for file hashes, we'll pick up those either by looking at the page and scrape that information or use the plugin.
yeah.
So the difference is observable could be any parameter, any IP domain is an observed transaction in a observed variable in a transaction, a
And
parameter in a transaction.
potentially we probably that parameter or attribute potentially helping us to understand what is going, and it will become a part of IOC if it is associated with any campaign,
Yeah.
right?
Any campaign.
Campaign.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
And there is another question which is like with this drill down that you are showing it here basically.
Hmm.
So through this drill down, with all this historical information that you have here, can we also do a drill down of the predictive attack chain? Means what could means there could be somewhere somehow we found that things are happening, and based on that, can you drill down on the predictive attack chain?
Okay, so see, predictive is subjective, right?
Yeah, yeah,
In if you look at a Lockheed Martin kill chain, my ability to detect a threat before it becomes a breach can also be called predictive,
yeah,
right? Predicted before a breach.
yeah,
So
yeah,
the observable is identified as an indicator, part of a recon activity. That I can call as predictive. So from an
yeah,
attack standpoint, this is how we can look at predictive. But when you're looking at domains, we have intelligence to show information in our platform called Umbrella. It's a DNS security solution. So based on the domains that a campaign is using, we can predict whether it is going to be part of a campaign.
yeah.
Based on the behavior of the domain, the
So this
transactions
is
that the domain gets
yeah.
involved.
So this is really
So
interesting. Based on the campaigns, you can predict whether this particular observable can would become a part of any campaign. This is a very interesting point that you are making it here, basically.
yeah,
So
yeah.
now, I think this
Just,
particular
just sorry. Just to highlight the way we do that is just one formula. There are many formulas. The way we do that is we actually reverse engineer the algorithm that goes behind generating a domain name.
yeah,
And if the same algorithm matches to not so malicious domain that we see,
yeah,
we know that this is created by the same threat actors,
yeah,
and we
yeah,
know that they have created this because they're actually waiting for something big,
yeah.
and something big is going to happen on top of this. So that's one formula, but there are many ways of doing that.
Maybe see what we say that ki something happen or happening somewhere else would likely to happen to you, right? So that that would help at least to identify ki something like this would happen and something like this observables may come into picture. So you be better mindful of that actually.
So,
That kind of fits into the Lockheed Martin kill
Yeah,
chain.
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Am I
What
audible?
is a breach in a
Yeah.
Bangladesh FSI? Yes, you are,
yeah,
Vishak, now. What was a
yeah,
breach in a Bangladesh FSI segment,
Yeah.
if the same observables are seen now, right now, before a
Yeah.
breach,
Yeah.
I'm using that intel to predict that, okay, if that
Yeah. Yeah.
same observables IOCs are coming in here, definitely it is going to go for the same
So
kind
just to
of
give you a live example, Vinayak, on this Log4j, many CISOs, when we broadcasted that this is the advisory for that, they came back and said, is there a tool where I can find out what is
Yeah.
actually happening for Log4j?
Yeah.
One is the traditional VA scan. Cisco has a Kenna security, which can identify and then give you a threat score. But the basic premise of these vulnerabilities, how do you look at something which is going to happen, right? So, as Ashraf said, like the umbrella portion, whenever somebody is trying to infect a payload, it has to go and connect back to your CNC, right? So the best way to actually look at is there something malicious is happening is to get your visibility increased,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And see if there is any CNC malicious domain or your IP, and look at is this a trusted source? And that's where if you have a threat feed which is coming in which says, okay, these are the IPs which has these callback functions, then I would say a predictive analysis would be to look at before even the payload comes in and then they starts moving a lateral movement, right? Can you look at that first port of call at a much earlier stage? And I think we are moving toward the stage of looking at your observables much early. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't say predicting an attack, but before the deluge actually happens, right?
Yeah.
Before
Yeah.
a data exfiltration actually happens. So I would say this actually brings down your time to detect, right? And I think
Yeah.
there is also some questions on industry benchmark on MTTDR and MTT.
Yeah, so the
We'll take, yeah.
question is more like by deploying this approach, basically means have you able to see the improvements in the detections and response, basically?
Yeah, yeah. So the industry average, typically people say that it's 180 days, and we've seen the early signs of predictive attacks. The algorithms what we use, especially on our Cisco umbrella, uh, we are able to get it down into a few hours in terms of looking at what are the callbacks, map it up with that particular CNC domain. Where have we seen in the world? Is this particular? Can you attribute this CNC to a specific group? And then things becomes a lot more easier to sort of reduce the time to
Yeah. So there's one more question, I
detect
think.
as well, right? So I think
Yeah.
we have enough examples.
Yeah. So there's one more question, I think, Sandeep, which is you talked about this dynamic user protection. The question is it something near to what UABA does, or is it engaging? Is it an independent functionality, or it works with the UABA, or how is that different or equivalent to UABA that we see? There had been some mention about the DUP, right?
Yeah, so UEBA is one of the ways in which we can get that context.
Yeah.
For this tool, any sensor that says, "Hey, I'm seeing a threat," is an information. So UEBA can be one of those sensors.
Yeah.
Behavioral anomaly detection could be one of those sensors. UEBA may be agent dependent, whereas behavioral anomaly detection may be agentless. So for XDR platform, the more information that comes, the better, because we are able to correlate better. With more information, we can take decisions quickly. Right? And in Cisco's portfolio, we have the UEBA capability coming from one of the collaborated solutions with Splunk. We call it CESA. And we can also take information from third-party UEBAs as well. Yeah, both ways it works.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so in the interest of time, let me
Yeah,
quickly
we have
take
another
pace.
10, 12 minutes to
Yeah,
conclude. Yeah.
I understand. Okay, so we'll quickly, is my screen visible? I'm on the graph. Okay, so we looked at relationship graphs. We looked at the
Yeah.
targets that comes from the relationship graph. Actually, the relationship graph
No,
tells us a
I think
story.
Sandeep, you require to disable your screen. Then only.
Or you have to stop sharing. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That is
is
okay
it
now.
visible? Okay.
Yeah.
So we looked at threat response, We said, okay, bring in observables. We can bring in observables manually. Again, it doesn't help automation. We said use a plugin to scrape observables from a page. Third party, Cisco, any vendor, blogs, you can bring in observables. We can also bring in observables from blogs, RSS feeds that are coming in, where I can put orchestration module to monitor that periodically. If it comes at 3 a.m., I have everybody sleeping. There's only L1 engineer in the SOC. This workflow can run, pick up these observables and run this whole thing that we looked at. So the whole thing that we did by clicking can also be automated without any human intervention. And we look at that in the orchestration portion very quickly. We have the history as well, the timelines of how we are seeing the observables activity in my environment versus global. So that is available here in this window. And the details of these observables. How did we go about saying this is a bad observable? It is malicious. What are the source of information for me to take that call? So judgments, verdicts, sightings, all these are information that we are gathering from different threat sources, threat intel sources, Cisco, non-Cisco, global threat intel. All that can be consumed here. Even virus total can be utilized here as well. And then you have the metrics bar on top. We'll always watch for the target list. So the targets, when it comes up, we know there is a campaign that is targeting my organization. So this is what we did in a graphic that we are seeing here. There are many other use cases. We can do threat hunting, incident response with Securex. So what we are doing is gathering intel from one side, the global intel, file intel from different products and from intel sources. We're gathering local context of how that intel applies to my environment, how that IOC is interacting in my environment. And then we are taking response actions all from one console. And as I said, observables could be file hash, IP address, domain, URL. There are many, many ways of defining an observable. All this is working based on APIs. So for enrichment, it's user or API that queries threat response. Threat response will go ask these, again, using APIs. For internal context, it is looking at logs. For Intel, it is using API integration to ask that question. And then you get a response, whether it is bad, good, unknown, and using that you are taking actions. The actions could be block or quarantine. So those actions are going back to the targets, which is my security products. So what you're looking at is a product that could be in cloud, it's a service, or a product that could be on premise as well. If it is for both these, we need a relay module. The relay module is nothing but it translates API queries from Securex as an XDR back to the target understandable format, right? So that it's acting like a broker. And the same can work for third parties as well. So I build a relay module. The relay module allows me to communicate between Securex and the third parties, the targets. The relay module is a piece of program, and it can reside in a cloud, can reside in an on-premise data center in a DMZ. It can be in a third-party hosted infrastructure as well, or we have some of those supported third-party relays that we are hosting within Securex Cloud. So these are options. So this is how you can see that how open the platform is. Whatever be the target, you build the relay module, host it anywhere. We are not restricting it that it should be Securex hosted, and the interaction happens with third party. So what we are seeing is some of those third party lists, a short list, but we have a huge list of them available. I will share resources at the end of this deck, which can be available as references as well, to see what are those third parties that we have built relay modules, what are the third parties where we have continuous collaboration that is going on, any updates in their software, we do that as well. So quickly, I think you can take this quiz number 4. Sandeep will release it. This is about, this is a quiz, not a poll. We're asking a question based on what we just looked at. What do we need to integrate with third-party targets? Um, something that we looked at so far. Again, the guidance is here, how to take this quiz. Quickly moving on to the last two modules. One is orchestration. Beyond what we looked at, dashboards, ribbon that takes context, threat response that allows you to investigations. Remember, I said when you take a response action, there could be two types. One atomic action, where one API call to one product to execute one click that you do on a UI through that atomic action. Two, there could be a series of events, actions, a playbook, a flow chart of playbook actions, activities, which is what we call as playbook. We can build those playbooks in this platform and interact with those targets. The target could be Cisco, third party, ITSM tool, identity tool. It could be anything, right? Again, we are taking actions. So, in a normal sense, what a human powered task will do things repetitively, we can actually take them all into a workflow and automate that, right? That's where the work orchestration module helps us to do. We can use it for investigations. We saw that earlier. We'll have a quick look at how we can use it for investigation. We can also use it for regular automations. Um, we do things what we call as auto scaling in cloud. If you apply that to a VPN concentrator, let's say I'm into a pandemic situation, I have 10,000 employees who are roaming. Suddenly, I need to support 50,000 employees. I need to have a VPN infrastructure that scales automatically. So you can use automation for operations as well. So you can build workflows for IT ops as well, but the core thing that we look at is investigation based automation. So this is how it looks, the Securex orchestration module. So it's a simple drag and drop, right? You're seeing a flowchart like thing. It builds the code behind it. What we are looking at is an orchestration module, a workflow that I can drag and drop and build for those where we have integration already available. For example, it could be ServiceNow, or it could be an identity services engine, which is a NAC, or it could be a DNS center, which is a campus switching fabric, ACI, which is a data center, or an APM like AppD, or it could be AWS cloud service. I can take anything that responds to my API calls you're seeing here. When I click this, I will get to see all the atomic actions. I can just drag and drop, connect them to build a workflow. It's so simple. It's low code, no code kind of
Yeah.
thing that you can build. At the same time, if you don't have them on the left hand side, you can build the JSON and import that. So there are two ways. You have off the shelf workflows, and you can build workflows and import them into this platform. All that it does is use API call to invoke the target for response, the activities that you want to be executed, and the adapter helps you to do that. The activities are executed and you get the results back. Results comes to the orchestration engine and it uses the result to move further. So you can build those tasks and sequence them to execute them. I'll quickly show. Okay, so this is the other thing, right? The whole Securex is a cloud platform, and it can interact very well with the cloud offered service because nothing is on premise, data is in the cloud. If I'm talking about the email security on cloud, endpoint security on cloud, cloud to cloud interactions does not require anything on premise in your data center. But if you have firewalls on premise, if you have NAC systems on premise, identity solutions on premise, for Securex module, what we call it as a remote component, right? Because it's in the cloud and it has to talk through DMZ and then get response from that particular on-premise on target. So for that, we have this SXO remote that we have built. So what you're seeing here is analyst triggering playbook. The playbook runs on Securex. One it can execute all the API calls on a cloud asset like a CASB, cloud email security, cloud-based DNS security, cloud-based EDR. So there is direct interaction. The API framework is interfacing through the integration that we have natively. If it is on-premise, we have to deploy a gateway like module, SSE, we call it Security Services Engine or Exchange. So it helps us to talk to the on-premise modules and get that response back. So we don't have to expose every product to the cloud. We have to just use that broker, that gateway. The gateway will take all the communication and safely take the response back from on-premise assets as well. By
Yeah.
means of which we're able to collaborate. Get context not just from cloud, also from on-premise, so
Yeah.
that the investigations can be done end to end.
Yeah. And one important thing before we kind of conclude is that uh, the whole Securex is not a costed item to our customers. As long as you buy a single security product of Cisco, Securex is by natively given. So we are not taxing the customer with additional costs for the SOR capability or for that integration capability. It's out of the box, which is available. So we think customers should go on a path of from detection to remediation. How do you bring in automation at zero cost? Right. So, and that's what is the whole philosophy behind our costing of Securex per se. Back to you, Ashra.
Yeah, so with that, I'll conclude. I know we have a couple of minutes. One way you can use orchestration workflow. We talked about having investigations based on blog giving us IOCs. We can also do this getting the blog as a RSS feed, so you can run a playbook. The RSS feed hits this playbook, triggers the playbook. So which means, let's say, SANS Storm Center releases a blog about a particular critical threat campaign. That becomes a blog and that can come as an RSS feed. The RSS feed will be scanned by this module, and the moment it sees it, it runs the whole investigation which Sandeep was walking through, comes to a point where I have 5 targets, and then opens a ticket or even takes containment action on those 5 targets. 9 o'clock, the analyst comes to SOC and he sees 2 tickets, and the ticket has a history saying, okay, there is an orchestration workflow that ran 3 a.m. in the morning because of a Storm Center's alert. And using that, we found 5 targets, and those 5 targets are contained. Here it is for you to take over. So you can automate to that extent, to completely bring SOC. There are many ways, many other things that you can do. I just a conclusive remark on the resources and what we have seen. What we are getting an environment of any cybersecurity practitioner is, number one, we are solving the problem of console hopping. We are solving the problem of integration between multiple vendors. So you can use your investments today and then get the outcome of, get the applications that the Securex threat response as an XDR brings to the table. So from a siloed product use, you're coming to a point where
Yeah.
you have a shared context from multiple products, and eventually the whole idea is to reduce time to detect, time to investigate, time to respond, and I'm sure this product helps to achieve that.
Yeah,
There
yeah,
are
and
resources available for your reference. There's a GitHub community available, which is building these playbooks, these workflows for multiple third parties. So you can import workflows from there and utilize it for your.
yeah, and lastly, see, the big fight is not between the vendor A and vendor B, right? I see a big tile of our vendors in this platform, but the real fight is between the bad guys and the defenders, right? And we got to play a larger ecosystem play and not be vendor agnostic and get it tied up to a single vendor, right? So what we
Yeah.
are attempting at Cisco is to create an industry framework which is open, where we can collaborate with our competitors as well. So that's the path what we've taken.
Yeah, and then just to like from our side, if you just look at from this platformization, right? So there are a lot of capabilities, right, and components and services out there available, but consuming them is very difficult task. And this platform-based approach really allows you to consume that those capabilities, components, and services in a very scalable manner. Basically, it allows you to leverage the capability and leverage the experiences of others as well, basically. And during the course of the time, actually, you assimilate a lot of learnings, new use cases, new innovation as well. So this also allows you to basically assimilate all that for your security management. And doing while you do that, basically, this is done in such an open architecture way. So orchestration had been the concept that we had been talking for last so many years, but what we mean at a practice ground level is something possible with this kind of approaches, basically. And that's why I think some of the things which I look seen in this presentation is the how the experience is very seamless for the researcher there or analyst there, basically, and how can overall response can be very coordinated and also derived from the experience of others, basically. So bringing all of them together and also from there triggering all those action in a very easy and seamless manner is something that I think that's how I got this learning from today's interaction, but basically. And thank you both, Mohammed and Sandeep, for presenting and more importantly, bringing this larger uh, framework understanding. Thank you, Vashak, for bringing that together. This was definitely very in-depth exploration and dwelling into the concept which had been in discussion, but probably not very much visible for people, ki how exactly it happens at the ground level, basically. And thanks three of you basically to making it happen and assisting to really helping us set up this particular interaction. And some of the questions audience asked basically also helped really adding value to the what we have been doing. And there are a lot of these now links which have been given here, which all of you can go explore and see how things have been evolved. And more importantly, the approach which is evolving is very unified, very coordinated, very collaborative kind of approach which is emerging. So that it also respect the capability that they generated. Means anybody else, anybody out there can build some capability, but we have very open architecture. You can assimilate those capabilities and learning in the this ecosystem, basically. That's why security is more unified, coordinated, and collaborated, and we have seen the witness of that in today's interaction.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you
Aishak.
all.
Thank you, Sandeep. Thank you, Mohammed, and thank you all the participants joining it here and some of those quick questions that you asked today. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Have a good
Thank
day.
you.